The delegation is already in Istanbul. Trump is going all in. This strike could be decisive. The US Senate has announced that devastating sanctions against Russia are already on the way. Meanwhile, hell is breaking loose at Russian airfields. The SBU is hunting down Putin's aircraft, 40 planes down. All of Russia is exploding. Moscow has been torn apart by drones and more. 2 powerful explosions destroyed the base. Ambulances couldn't keep up with evacuating the wounded Russian soldiers. The details, however, are surprising. And Duda shocked everyone with a historical digression. What sensational statement did he make? Let's go through everything step by step. The Russian delegation has already arrived in Istanbul, where a new round of negotiations is set to begin. Russia has announced that it will send the same delegation to the second round of negotiations with Ukraine in Turkey as it did to the first. And while both sides are waiting for the negotiations to begin, it has become known that the US may significantly strengthen sanctions against Russia in response to the ongoing aggression in Ukraine. Senators have introduced a bipartisan bill that provides for tough economic restrictions. They propose imposing 500% tariffs on imports from countries that purchase Russian oil, gas, uranium, and other resources. In addition, sanctions will be imposed against Russian banks and energy companies. The third stage involves freezing the assets of individuals and companies that support Russia's military actions. However, US President Donald Trump stated that he does not know whether he will support the bill to strengthen sanctions against Russia, which was prepared in the US Senate.
Washington, United States. Will you support the Graham and Blumenthal bill to impose sanctions against Russia?
I don't know. I have to take a look. I'll take a look.
Trump is still considering the restrictions, but he is already ready to make some concessions. For example, U.S. Presidential Special Representative Keith Kellogg stated that the United States is ready to discuss the demands of the aggressor country, Russia, regarding the non-expansion of NATO to the east. He considers such a condition for ending the war in Ukraine to be reasonable, and that it is not only Washington that opposes admitting Kyiv to the alliance. Kellogg emphasized that Moscow is demanding that not only Ukraine be kept out of the defense bloc. They say that the Kremlin also mentions Georgia and Moldova.
They mention both Georgia and Moldova. And we say, fine, we can discuss halting NATO expansion up to your border. These are their security interests.
But Kellogg added that Trump is disappointed with the level of irrationality shown by Russia in the peace negotiation process. Kellogg stated that Moscow has still not delivered to the Ukrainian side the promised ceasefire memorandum, which was supposed to be the result of previous meetings. According to him, this creates additional risks for the continuation of the negotiation process. Kellogg also confirmed that Putin promised to provide his own proposals for ending the war within a week. But neither the American nor the Ukrainian side has received them.
I asked the head of the office of the President of Ukraine if he had seen this document. He said that he had not seen it at all. Lead Ukrainian negotiator Rustem Umerov also has not received it.
According to Trump's special representative, Ukraine may now reject the proposal for negotiations in Istanbul since it still has not received the promised memorandum. Kellogg noted that Donald Trump had put forward several initiatives that could have served as a basis for discussing the future status of the occupied territories. However, the lack of response from Russia and the weak support for these ideas left him disappointed. And yet another statement was made during the Security Council meeting. The U.S. representative stated that Washington is even considering the possibility of withdrawing from peace initiatives altogether if Putin does not stop his aggression against Ukraine. In his speech, he emphasized that the United States is ready to negotiate an end to the war in Ukraine. However, delays and Russia's unwillingness to cooperate may force Washington to reconsider its position.
If Russia makes the wrong decision to continue this catastrophic war, the United States will have to consider abandoning our negotiation efforts to end this conflict. To be clear, this does not mean we will abandon our principles or our friends. Rather, we acknowledge Russia's refusal to cooperate with us to achieve the desired outcome.
And he was immediately answered by Russia's representative to the UN, Vasily Nebenzia. He stated that no sanctions or other hostile actions will be able to prevent the inevitable military defeat of what is called in Russia the Kyiv regime. He added that Russia will continue the special military operation as long as Ukraine tries to prolong the war and strike Russian territory. But this really is an eloquent response to those who say that Russia actually wants peace and that a compromise just needs to be found.
As long as Kyiv continues to try to prolong the war and provoke Russia by striking residential civilian infrastructure on our territory, we will continue our special military operation and destroy facilities connected to the military potential of the Kyiv regime. and no new anti-Russian sanctions, arms supplies to Ukraine, or other hostile actions against Russia will prevent the inevitable military defeat, the defeat of the Zelensky regime.
Apparently, the strikes on Russian territory are really hitting a sore spot. After all, just in the past week, there have been constant, powerful explosions and fires in Russia. For example, in the Kursk region, an unidentified drone struck a hotel housing Russian soldiers. Just yesterday, Ukraine accomplished the impossible. The security service of Ukraine carried out a large-scale special operation called WEB to destroy enemy bomber aircraft that attack Ukrainian cities every night. Initial reports indicated that more than 40 Russian aircraft were hit, including strategic bombers such as the Tu-95, Tu-22M3, as well as A-50 aircraft. The enemy's losses already exceed $2 billion. Footage has appeared online showing how, not far from the airfield, Ukrainian FPV drones take off from trucks that had arrived in advance at the airfields from Russian territory and immediately fly off to destroy Russian strategic aviation. Russia has never seen such a daring strike before. The strikes hit 4 airfields: Belaya, Diaghilevo, Olenia, and Ivanovo. The locals are in a panic. Dozens of explosions were heard, the sky was filled with smoke, and the SBU drones hit their targets precisely. While the Kremlin remains silent, Putin's army has lost its elite aviation. What was used every day to bomb Ukrainian cities has now turned into heaps of scrap metal. After the powerful raid, the SBU also tore into the Russians on Telegram. Even Z-bloggers are no longer hiding their panic.
Every voice matters. Join our community, support independent journalism, and help us bring you the truth from Ukraine. Become a member of Ukraine today. Join us now.
And Ukrainian intelligence carried out a brilliant operation in Vladivostok. 2 powerful explosions went off at the location of the Russian Marines. Personnel, military equipment, and special equipment were hit. Local residents report that no fewer than 10 ambulances and an evacuation helicopter arrived at the scene. Damaged equipment is being removed from the military base. Meanwhile, as expected, regional authorities reported that the incident was caused by the explosion of 2 gas cylinders and that no one was injured as a result. But that's not all. Moscow and St. Petersburg were wide awake too. Hundreds of drones swarmed over Russia. The Moscow region was so shaken by all this activity that it practically sat down. The streets of Moscow are strewn with debris, windows are shattered, and facades are damaged. Odintsovo was hit as well.
My bay window, my triplex, my beautiful double-glazed windows suffered the most. You could say it's gone.
And who brought the gift?
Our favorite neighbor.
Remember, the one we were talking about. You know, the one we mentioned?
In St. Petersburg, the avant-garde factory is out of commission. Z-channels are freaking out. Putin's defense industry is falling apart right before our eyes. According to Russian media, this enterprise produces, among other things, radio electronics, microcircuit technology, is engaged in instrument engineering, and manufactures basic supporting structures for radio electronic equipment. The factory is included in the list of strategic and systemically important enterprises of the Russian Federation and holds the status of a federal scientific and production center. And that means it is a legitimate target for the Ukrainian armed forces. Locals complain that no one is shooting down the drones. The situation is dire. The explosions are literally paralyzing Russia. The locals are not hiding their despair. The blasts are keeping people from sleeping, everyone is anxious, the authorities are silent, and fear is spreading faster than the news. But let's get back to the latest statements regarding negotiations. Against this backdrop, influential Western publications note, Trump felt humiliated because Putin does not want to end the war and refuses to agree to a ceasefire. Even though the US president seriously believed he was open to meaningful negotiations. However, Trump still has not given up on the idea of reaching an agreement with Russia. In recent weeks, signs of tension have begun to appear in these relations. Analysts emphasize that Trump is now irritated by Putin's unwillingness to sign a ceasefire agreement with Kyiv and by new footage of violence in Ukraine. That is why the US president recently publicly expressed his dissatisfaction to the Russian dictator and is privately considering the possibility of sanctions aimed at forcing Moscow to come to the negotiating table. In the West, it is being reported that Trump has started to feel humiliated by the fact that Putin is stringing him along and disappointed that Putin apparently does not want to end the war. At the same time, Trump stated that he will wait another 2 weeks before deciding on his next steps regarding Russia. Analysts note that this stance is Trump's favorite rhetorical tactic when he wants to buy time. And this gives rise to concerns that the relationship between Trump and Putin will endure. The publication's authors emphasize that this conditional 2-week period announced by Trump also postpones a potential turning point in Russia's war against Ukraine. Will the US president withdraw from involvement after the war ends, which would only strengthen Russia, or will he, for the first time, truly stand up to Putin? However, as analysts write, if a disillusioned Trump completely abandons efforts to end the war, this decision will almost certainly play into Russia's hands. Without pressure from Washington regarding negotiations, Russia will likely escalate the violence even further. Europe will bear a much greater burden of responsibility for supplying weapons to Ukraine and ensuring its security. And although Europe has rallied around Ukraine since the beginning of the war, European militaries cannot match the United States' ability to support Kyiv. However, the Russian army is also facing certain problems, and that is already happening now. The Russian army's problems with personnel are forcing Moscow to recruit mercenaries from all over the world, which further calls into question the already absurd claim that the war is being fought to protect the Russian world. In particular, Russian social media channels have posted a video showing the recent reinforcements for the 102nd Motorized Rifle Regiment of the occupying forces. China, Kenya, Colombia, Bangladesh, Iran, plus people from the Caucasus and a few Orthodox Christians. That is exactly how the published video was captioned. In the video itself, the person with the camera asks where the new recruits have come from. Where are you from?
Dagestan, Ingushetia, Kenya, Kenya 32, Iran, Kenya. Mutai Felix Kruputat, Kenya, Pupulapan.
My name is Zhang Jia. I am 25 years old. I'm from China.
And my mother is Kafarli Damian, Colombia.
Italy. 49 years old.
Well, thank God.
He is a good man. 20 years old.
My name is Ma Yamba, 22 with the act, 2 at 25. I'm from China.
My name is Niha, 34. I'm from China.
Martin Menajara, 36 years, Kenya.
It is worth noting that in April 2025, the Russian dictator Putin awarded this regiment the title of Guards. And while the world discusses Russia's outrageous statements, the president of Poland has also made headlines with a sensational speech. Andrzej Duda stated that most of Ukrainian society does not know the history of the Volhynia tragedy, and expressed his outrage that in Ukraine he is met by people wearing armbands in Bandera colors. He also emphasized that Poland will never consider the OUN-UPA as fighters for Ukraine's freedom.
Polish.
When we do not agree to your statutes that glorify the rabble responsible for the massacres of Poles, for the genocide that was committed against Poles, Shukiewicz and others, we will never accept that you honor them as heroes, and we will never accept this. For us, they are simply ordinary thugs, soldiers, murderers, and genociders. And that is how we will always call them, and we will never accept otherwise. Subtitles editor A. Semkin. He recalled a conversation with the president of Ukraine, who allegedly admitted earlier that he knew little about the Volyn tragedy since he was born during the Soviet era, and this topic was not discussed during his schooling or in other educational institutions. That is precisely why Duda suggested that most Ukrainians also do not know about this and are surprised when they are told about the crimes committed against Poles.
And what do you think about the latest events in the world? Share your opinion in the comments.